Hello, this is Zeb McCorkle, and I'm here with a tutorial on getting started with Applied Energistics 2. Now, you might be thinking, now if you've seen my previous videos, I might be a little obsessed with Applied Energistics 2. It's just such an interesting mod. So it adds things, like this terminal, that lets me view all of my items. And these are just flowing in from my quantum quarry from Extra Utilities 2. And so it's storing a massive amount of items. You got 22,000 cobblestone. It's rising every tick. No, not quite every tick, but it's rising pretty much constantly. Over 2,000 dirt, and it's not even close to being full. Well, let's take a look at the setup I currently have, and then we'll get started with Applied Energistics. So this might look a little bit complex, but let's just break it down. First, over here, we've got power generation, because these Applied Energistics storage networks require power. So I'm just feeding in some furnace generators from Extra Utilities 2, because they're cheap generators. If I go and check the recipe, they are not expensive at all. And they generate a decent amount of RF. And then I'm pumping it into an energy acceptor, which is connected to the rest of the network via these smart cables. And I'll tell you why I use smart cables as opposed to the many different kinds of cables later. Then I have these drives, which contain storage cells. Now these storage cells are the actual items that hold everything that's in your network. So there are a bunch of different kinds of storage cells. There's 1K all the way to 64K, and I don't know why there's a 16K here. I thought I put a 64K. Whatever. So the difference between these is the amount of items they can store. No, I didn't say the amount of kinds of items, but the amount of items themselves. Each cell can only store 63 different kinds of items. So right now I have quite a bit less than that. It's about half, I'd say. It's 34 types, because you can see on the tooltip 34 out of 63 types. And you can also see how many bytes are used. Now each byte is an item, so you can store 16,384 items in a 16K cell. In a 64K cell, 65,536. And if you're wondering how I got those numbers, the K means multiply by 1024. It's a bit counterintuitive, but it's how it works in a lot of computer applications, so that's how it works in Applied Energistics also. So now, you're wondering, how am I getting the items into the system from my quantum quarry over here? There's this block called the interface, and it pretty much acts like a single block that holds your entire ME system. It acts like that. So you can pump items into this block with whatever mod you want. You can pump items out of this block. You can use what's called a storage bus and actually have a sub-AE network accessible from your main network. That's a bit more advanced. I might get to that in a further video. And so I'm just having the quantum quarry toss all of its items into the interface. And the interface is automatically putting them into the cell. Over here is just an energy cell, in case I run out of coal coke. This will keep running, and so I can just head over here into my system, grab some of that coal, or craft up some coal blocks, and put them into the generators, and then I'm good. So that holds 400,000 RF. It's good enough for powering it in an emergency. I'm just going to put that all back in the system. So it's not quite straightforward to get started with Applied Energistics. You're going to need to find a few things in the world that aren't too common. The most common thing is Certus quartz ore. You'll find this all over the place. It's just an ore, you mine it, and you get Certus quartz. Simple as that. But then you're going to need a special kind of Certus quartz ore. Charged Certus quartz ore. This is pretty much the same looking, except it has little particles coming out of it. You mine it, and you get charged Certus quartz crystal. You get a little achievement too. You only ever need to mine one of those, and I'll show you why. Alright, so once you have your charged Certus Quartz Crystal, you need to take it, a piece of Nether Quartz, and a piece of Redstone. Toss them all into some water. And you see the little sparks? There we go. Now we've got a Fluix, we've got 2 Fluix Crystals. And before you go and try to make anything fancy with them, you first need to make one machine. The charger, which is going to require both of these Fluix Crystals. It's just Fluix Crystals and a bit of iron. So once you have the charger, then you can put it down and have some sort of RF input. So I'm just going to get a creative, the creative energy source from Extra Utilities, because I'm not going to bother with producing power properly. Toss the Certus Quartz Crystal in there. And in theory, it should start charging. Alright, it seems I just had to put the energy source on top. Now I've got a charged Certus Quartz Crystal. And I can keep making these. Once you see it becomes little light blue, there you go. You've got charged crystal. That's fantastic. So now you got charged crystals. Woohoo! When do I get to making some fancy drives and some fancy terminals? Well, let's take a look at the recipe for the drive. I have this on JEI Synchronized Auto. Oh, it's a little buggy. That's not a recipe. So you need engineering processors. You need Fluix, glass cables, Fluix, and some iron. So the Fluix cables are just quartz fiber, and Fluix quartz fiber is just Certus or Nether quartz dust with glass. That's pretty simple. If you have most other mods, you can just use your macerator or your whatever you use to grind ores down to make these dusts. It's pretty simple. And then the Fluix you just make, again, by taking your charged Certus, your Nether quartz, and your redstone, tossing them into a pool of water, and getting a bunch of Fluix. And this is essential for making most things in this mod. So now, the processor. That's the difficult part here. Because if you look, you need to make it in an inscriber with a printed engineering circuit. That's not too bad. But it needs these presses. Where do you get these presses from? Printed silicon? No, it needs a silicon press. Well, that's what this whole meteorite situation here is for. You need to go out into the world with a meteor compass, find some meteors. They can be above ground, they can be underground, they can be wherever. And whenever you see your compass moving around like that, I'm sorry, what's the word for that? Spinning like that, quickly. Then you're in the same chunk as a meteor. So once you found a meteor, you just gotta get to the center, get to the chest, you get some various materials, and you also, oh wow, that's pure coincidence. I'm pretty sure those are the exact presses we need for this. So we need the engineering press, and we need the silicon press. Good, we got the exact ones we need. Now I'm going to head over here. I'm going to replace this with an inscriber. And now what I can do, I can toss my silicon press. I can grab some silicon, which is just made by sag milling clay, redstone ore, or sand. That's from Ender.io. I guess Applied Energistics might have its own silicon if you don't have Ender.io. But you can look it up in JEI or NEI or whatever if you don't have Ender.io, but I assume chances are if you're using Applied Energistics in a pack, you've got Ender.io. So you can just grab a bunch of silicon, toss it in there. You'll see the progress bar filling up. And there you go. You got some printed silicon. Now I'm going to grab a diamond, because that's required for the engineering. Actually, I'm going to grab another piece of silicon. And then I'm also going to grab 2 diamonds because we're making 2 of these processors for the drive. I'll toss the engineering press in there. Diamond, silicon. Oh, I'm stupid. So, burn an engineering circuit. Good God. Make another diamond. And I'll just need a couple redstone. And then I just grab these, toss that in there, toss that in there, toss that in there, and then we're going to get a processor. So, you may or may not get the inscriber presses you want in whatever meteorite you find. You might have to find quite a few meteorites. But they're not too difficult to find, and especially if you just are able to dig out a chunk, they're pretty easy. Now, if you find one on a chunk border, if you look on your mini-map, if you have a mini-map, you look at the chunk borders, or you press F3 and G, it'll show your chunk borders. So let's head up to the surface real quick so I can show you what I'm talking about here. This meteorite is in these 2 chunks. So therefore, the compass spins in both of these chunks. So you don't need to waste your time mining up around here. Just mine on the chunk border. You don't have to waste your time mining around here. Just mine up the chunk border. You don't have to mine up the entire chunk. Pro tip. And a lot of meteorites spawn like that because they just spawn randomly. They don't spawn entirely inside one chunk. And as a matter of fact, this is in 3 chunks. So, if you know it's in 3 chunks, you can just mine along that corner and you'll find it. So let's head back in here. And now we've got our processors. We can make a drive. If I had some Fluix cables, but these are very simple to make. You just need the Fluix crystals, the glass fiber. So I've got a drive. Yippee! What do I do with this now? You can place it down, and you can admire it, and you can go into creative mode to get rid of this. So now you've got your drive, and you can do absolutely nothing with it. So you're going to need that energy acceptor I talked about earlier to grab some power. This, thankfully, is very simple. It just requires some quartz glass, which is quartz dust and some glass, some iron, and Fluix crystal. Energy acceptor, and have some sort of energy source. I'll just use a creative energy source because I'm not going to bother setting up real energy production. And then cables, because you're going to need cables if you're going to do most things with ME systems, as you'll see in a minute. So I'm just going to grab some ME glass cable Fluix because these are very simple to make, as I showed earlier. But then there's also smart cables for something I will talk about in a minute. They show a mechanic called channels. So I'm just going to place down a cable here, and then I'm going to get a terminal. Now, I tend to use a crafting terminal just because they're so useful, but you might want to start off with just a plain terminal. So you'll need a logic processor, which is made with gold in an inscriber logic press. You'll have to go find that press in a meteorite somewhere. Formation core, which is a logic processor, some Fluix, and some charged Certus, or pure Certus, or regular Certus, apparently. So just some Certus in general. And then this is the same, but with nether quartz. And then you need a bright illuminated panel, which is just an illuminated panel. And an illuminated panel is just quartz glass with some glowstone, redstone, and iron. So this is pretty simple to make. Place it on the cable, and that's why you need a cable, because you need to place it onto the cable. And then your ME system's online, but you can't do anything with it, because you need storage cells. So a 1K storage cell is just made from quartz glass, redstone, iron, and a storage component. Storage component is just another one of those logic processors, a bunch of Certus, any kind of Certus, and some redstone. So they're fairly simple to make, and you're probably going to need a lot of them, because you're probably going to have more than 63 types. Because if you have less than 63 types, just get a 64K, that'll last you a good long time. But if you have more than 63 types, you're going to need a bunch of storage cells. And now you can go in, toss all your stuff in here, and you're good. Now you've got a very basic ME system. But what if you want to add more to it? Say I want to add a bunch of drives. Just a bunch of drives. I see no problem with this, right? It's just a bunch of drives. It's fine. Except for the fact, why isn't this working? I have enough power, because this is infinite power here. Why isn't this working? Well, there's a mechanic in Applied Energistics called channels. And I'm going to get more into designing networks around channels in a later episode, but you just have to keep in mind that a network without a block called a controller can only have 8 channels in it. And so you can't have more than 8 devices on a network. This network currently has 2 devices. Energy Acceptor isn't one of them, if I recall correctly. Because over here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. These smart cables show 1, 2, 3, 4 channels. And it says up in the WALA, 4 of 8 channels. And so the Energy Acceptor doesn't count, but the drive and the terminal do. So if I were to replace this with a smart cable, which I've got sitting in JEI, toss the smart cable in there, I can see there is currently 2 channels in use. Huh. It's not showing 2 channels. Why is it not showing 2 channels? I'm not sure. Probably... Okay, I'm either an idiot or I don't know. But you can see up in WALA, it's showing 2 of 8 channels. So, that's pretty much what matters. Because I'm also going to assume you've got WALA, because that's a pretty essential mod for most mod packs. So now you've got an ME system. You can just toss your stuff in there. You can do whatever you want, and you've got tons of storage. So I can just grab all of my items and toss them all in there, and there we go. Sort them by number of items, get some more of some. Perfect. Got items. It's all good. If you want to build a more complex ME system, I'll see you in the next episode of the Applied Energistics tutorial series. And if you want to actually see that episode, you might want to subscribe to my channel, maybe? You might get some notifications. Alright, see you then.